There comes a day when the applause that kept you obedient turns to static, and you finally hear a quieter thunder, the sound of your own will waking up. On that day, you stop asking the crowd for weather reports and start making your own climate. When you choose yourself, exile often comes before elevation. The moment you break the pattern of living for approval, the world you once called familiar begins to look at you differently. People who were comfortable with your compliance start to feel uneasy with your independence. Their affection was built on your predictability. When you stop nodding to every request and begin to listen to your own pulse, the air changes. You are no longer the agreeable companion who bends to every expectation. You become something rarer, a person with a spine, but that strength often looks like rebellion to those who benefit from your weakness. This is why isolation greets those who wake up to themselves. It is not punishment, it is purification. The crowd offers warmth, but at the cost of your fire. They hand you blankets woven from approval and call it love. Yet beneath it, your individuality suffocates. To rise, you must leave the fire and walk into the night. There, your thoughts echo louder, your fears follow you closely, and your truth demands to be faced without witnesses. It is uncomfortable, but so is growth. The silence of solitude tests whether your convictions can stand without applause. Every elevation begins with misunderstanding. People will say you've changed, as if remaining the same were a virtue. They'll accuse you of pride for no longer shrinking. But what they really fear is your reflection, a mirror that reminds them of their own unchosen lives. Do not chase their understanding. The path of self-choice cannot be explained to those who have never dared to walk it. It must be lived, step by step, through the ache of becoming. Exile has a hidden beauty. It cleanses your relationships. Only those who value your soul above your service remain. The rest drift away, revealing what was illusion and what was genuine. This pruning hurts, yet it prepares you. Every leaf that falls makes room for stronger roots. You begin to see that loneliness is not emptiness, it is space reclaimed from noise. In that space, your mind expands, your purpose sharpens, and your spirit stretches into its true proportions. Elevation is not about height, it is about clarity. When you stand apart, the view shifts. You see how many live in cycles of pretending, how easily truth is traded for comfort. You start to feel pity, not anger, because now you understand that most people are not free. They are managed by fear, shaped by expectation, and owned by approval. You were once among them, and now you are not. That is both your liberation and your burden. At the summit of this exile, a strange peace settles in. You stop waiting to be understood, and you start walking with quiet certainty. The wind that once chilled you now strengthens you. The solitude that once frightened you now becomes your ally. You have learned to breathe rare air, the kind that belongs only to those who have chosen themselves, even when the world called it exile. Freedom is a weight, not a pillow. When you choose yourself, you inherit the full consequence of your autonomy. There are no scapegoats left to blame, no comforting illusions to hide behind. The same independence that liberates you also confronts you with the truth that every decision now belongs entirely to you. Freedom strips away excuses. You can no longer say, "They made me do it," or "I had no choice." The moment you choose yourself, you become both the author and the critic of your destiny. That is why freedom, though glorified, often feels heavier than submission. Most people dream of freedom as comfort, imagining endless ease, rest, and joy. But real freedom is discipline disguised as liberty. It demands structure born from within, rather than imposed from outside. When you stop obeying others, you must learn to obey yourself. You must create your own law and then live by it, even when no one is watching. This is the hidden labor of a liberated soul, to replace external authority with inner mastery. Many fail here because they mistake freedom for chaos. But without self-command, freedom decays into indulgence, and indulgence becomes another kind of prison. The weight of freedom is the responsibility to act consciously. Every choice now matters because it defines your future, unmediated by the expectations of others. When you choose yourself, you cannot lean on collective excuses or borrowed wisdom. You must think, decide, and bear the results. This responsibility can crush those who still crave someone to tell them what to do. It requires maturity, the willingness to face the uncertainty that comes with genuine choice. It is easier to follow a script than to write one, but the script of another's approval will never fit your soul. Freedom also isolates you from the comfort of shared delusion. Most people bond over their mutual avoidance of truth. They complain together, suffer together, and never change. When you choose yourself, you exit that circle of complaint and step into the solitude of accountability. You no longer join in the collective blame game. You see clearly that you are both the obstacle and the opportunity. This clarity is costly because it removes the narcotic of victimhood. Without it, you are awake all the time, and wakefulness is heavy. To carry this weight, you must grow stronger. Freedom demands muscles of the mind and heart, discipline, focus, and courage. You become your own guide, your own enforcer. You hold yourself accountable when no one else will. That is the price of sovereignty. It's a lonely power at first, but with time, it breeds peace. Because once you accept that everything is up to you, no one can manipulate you again. You stop waiting for rescue. You stop waiting for permission. This is the paradox of freedom. It feels heavier than chains at the beginning, but once you learn to carry it, you discover it was never weight at all. It was your wings growing stronger under the pressure of choice. The sacred no protects the highest yes. When you finally begin to choose yourself, you discover that the strength of your life depends not only on what you pursue, but also on what you refuse. Most people are exhausted not because they do too much, but because they cannot say no to what drains them. They mistake politeness for virtue, compliance for love, and sacrifice for purpose. But every time you say yes to something unworthy, you say no to yourself. Your time, your peace, and your focus are spent on what does not serve your becoming. Learning to say no is the beginning of self-respect. It is not defiance, it is discernment. You start to see that every no is not an act of rejection, but of preservation. Like a gardener pruning branches, you cut away distractions so the tree of your life can grow straight and strong. To others, your boundaries will look like walls, but they are not barriers, they are gates with meaning. You decide who and what enters, not out of pride, but out of purpose. The first time you enforce a boundary, guilt will appear. It whispers that you are cruel, ungrateful, or selfish. That voice is the ghost of your old conditioning. You have been taught to measure your worth by your usefulness to others. So when you begin to reclaim your time, the old programming resists. But guilt is not guidance, it is residue. Let it pass through you without obedience. The more you practice saying no, the more natural it becomes. It is not rebellion against others. It is obedience to your truth. A sacred no has power because it is rooted in clarity. It is not an impulsive reaction, it is a deliberate act. You say no to anything that shrinks your spirit, dulls your creativity, or distorts your peace. You say no to false obligations, to manipulative praise, to relationships that feed on your doubt. In doing so, you create room for your highest yes, the projects, people, and paths that align with your deepest values. Every boundary frees space for something higher to enter. The paradox is that people will respect you more when you begin to say no. At first, they resist, but over time, your consistency commands reverence. You teach others how to treat you by how you treat yourself. When you guard your energy, you communicate that your time is sacred. This energy shifts your relationships. The ones built on exploitation dissolve. The ones built on mutual respect deepen. The sacred no refines your life into focus. It cuts noise into silence, chaos into order. It reveals who truly belongs beside you. Most importantly, it reminds you that your highest yes cannot exist without refusal. To protect your purpose, You must be willing to disappoint the world for a while, because one day, the world will admire the clarity that was born from your courage to say no. When you choose yourself, you begin the revaluation of values. The world you once obeyed starts to lose its authority. The rules that once shaped your identity, what success means, what love requires, what goodness looks like, suddenly appear as collective inventions rather than truths. You see how much of your morality was borrowed, how many of your dreams were inherited, and how many of your principles were designed to keep you obedient, not fulfilled. This is the unsettling beginning of freedom, when you stop renting your values and start minting your own. At first, this feels like disorientation. You stand in a moral vacuum where the old measures no longer fit, but new ones have not yet formed. The praise that once energized you no longer matters. The criticism that once crushed you loses its sting. You begin to act from a center that others cannot locate or understand. Society rewards conformity, not consciousness, so when you begin to define your own meaning, you become invisible to the world's scoreboard. But that invisibility is sacred. It shields your becoming. In this process, you question everything that claimed to define worth. You ask, is this good because it truly strengthens me, or because it pleases others? You test your habits like armor. Do they protect, or do they imprison? You realize much of what you called virtue was simply fear in disguise. Fear of disapproval, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. Choosing yourself exposes those fears to light. It reveals how often obedience masquerades as morality. Revaluing values means you start measuring life not by comfort, but by vitality. You stop asking, is this safe? And start asking, does this make me more alive? You replace imitation with creation, duty with authenticity. It doesn't mean abandoning compassion or community. It means refusing to betray your essence to belong. When you live by self-forged values, even your kindness becomes stronger because it is chosen, not coerced. This revaluation also changes how you see success. No longer a competition, it becomes a calling. You measure your achievements not by applause, but by alignment, how close your actions come to the vision that keeps your soul awake at night. You begin to see that mediocrity is not lack of talent, but lack of courage to defy borrowed standards. When you no longer chase what everyone else wants, you start creating what no one else can. People may call this arrogance, but it is clarity. You no longer confuse humility with self-denial. True humility is standing firm in who you are without needing to prove it. You bow only to what strengthens your spirit, never to what tames it. This transformation is not loud. It happens quietly in your private decisions, in your refusal to settle, in your silent devotion to truth. The revaluation of values is the moment you stop following life and start leading it from within. Self-overcoming is not a single moment of transformation, but a continuous craft. When you choose yourself, you inherit the responsibility of shaping yourself. You become both sculptor and stone. Most people want change without confrontation. They dream of becoming new while keeping their old habits. But self-overcoming demands friction. It is a process of deliberate discomfort, of facing the parts of yourself that resist growth and exposing them to the light of truth. Every day becomes a forge where the weaker metals of your character are melted and reformed into strength. You begin to realize that your greatest enemy was never outside of you. It was the voice within that whispered, "Stay small." Self-overcoming starts when you stop negotiating with that voice. You learn to confront laziness disguised as peace, fear disguised as logic, and doubt disguised as humility. You strip away every excuse that lets you live beneath your potential. This is painful work because it means admitting how often you have betrayed yourself through hesitation. But the pain is sacred. It signals rebirth. There is a rhythm to this craft. You fail, you learn, you rebuild, you repeat. The person you were yesterday becomes the raw material for the person you are creating today. Progress is not glamorous. It is hidden in the small disciplines that no one applauds. Waking early, keeping your word, mastering your impulses, finishing what you start. These are the quiet victories that shape destiny. They do not bring instant reward, but over time, they carve integrity into your being. Self-overcoming also means outgrowing your own pride. You stop clinging to achievements that once defined you. What was victory yesterday becomes mediocrity today if you do not keep evolving. The mountain does not congratulate the climber. It demands another ascent. You realize that becoming is infinite, that there is no final version of you. The moment you think you've arrived, decay begins. To stay alive, you must remain unfinished, always reaching beyond comfort. In solitude, this work deepens. There is no applause to sustain you, only the quiet hum of discipline. You learn to respect effort more than emotion, action more than inspiration. The true test of self-overcoming is what you do when motivation disappears. Do you stop, or do you continue because the work itself has become your identity? When you reach that point, persistence turns into power. Eventually, you look back and see the evolution, the habits you've replaced, the fears you've conquered, the patience you've built. You realize the enemy within has grown quieter, not because it vanished, but because you outgrew it. Self-overcoming is not destruction, it is refinement. You don't kill your old self, you educate it, you shape it until it serves your higher purpose. And though the struggle never ends, you no longer fear it. You understand now that growth and conflict are the same heartbeat, pulsing through the rhythm of becoming who you were meant to be. Amor fati, the love of fate, is the quiet crown of those who have chosen themselves. It means to embrace everything that happens, not as an accident, but as part of the necessary shape of your becoming. When you choose yourself, you stop fighting reality and begin to cooperate with it. You see that resistance wastes energy, but acceptance transforms it. Every event, pleasant or painful, becomes material for creation. You start to live as if life were not happening to you, but through you. At first, this idea feels almost impossible. How can you love what has wounded you? How can you bless the obstacles that slowed you down? Yet that is the essence of maturity, to realize that nothing you endured was wasted. Every delay taught patience. Every rejection refined your standards. Every heartbreak revealed where your loyalty did not belong. What once seemed punishment becomes preparation. To love your fate is to trust that the pattern of your life is wiser than your immediate understanding. The test of this love is the recurrence of days. Imagine that every choice, every conversation, every small act of courage or cowardice would repeat forever. Would you still live the same way? This is the measure of authenticity, to live in such a way that even eternal repetition would not fill you with regret. It is not about perfection, it is about presence. When you choose yourself, you aim to live deliberately enough that if this day were to return again and again, you would welcome it, knowing it was fully lived. This attitude changes how you respond to struggle. You no longer see chaos as punishment or randomness as injustice. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin to ask, "How can this shape me?" You recognize that life is not a straight road, but a spiral, returning you to old lessons until you learn them completely. The recurrence of similar pains is not cruelty, it is instruction. Fate repeats itself until you evolve beyond the need for repetition. When you embrace amor fati, fear loses its grip. You no longer waste time wishing things had gone differently. You stop living in the imaginary life that could have been and begin to honor the one that is. Gratitude replaces resentment because you understand that even pain served your unfolding. The future becomes less terrifying because you've already made peace with the past. To love fate is to love reality with all its contradictions. It means to hold joy and grief in the same breath, to bless both victory and failure as equal teachers. This is not passive acceptance, it is active reverence. You cooperate with destiny instead of demanding control. You meet each moment not with resistance, but with readiness, and in doing so, you discover freedom not from life, but within it. the freedom to say yes to everything that has made you who you are, and everything that is still waiting to shape you. When you finally choose yourself above all else, you become the author of your own becoming. You walk away from imitation and step into creation. The world will not clap for you at first. It will question, resist, and misunderstand. Yet, in that solitude, you begin to meet the raw, unpolished truth of who you are. You face your fears without a mask, your desires without shame, and your destiny without apology. Choosing yourself is not a rebellion against the world. It is a reconciliation with your soul. You learn that freedom is not softness, but structure, that love is not surrender, but strength, and that peace is not found in comfort, but in clarity. You stop seeking validation from those who never saw your depth. You stop chasing belonging in places that demanded your silence. You rise, not above others, but above the version of yourself that once settled for less. The journey costs everything false within you. You lose the noise of shallow approval and gain the silence of self-respect. You stop performing goodness and start embodying truth. Every wound becomes instruction, every fall becomes refinement, and every ending becomes a beginning in disguise. You cease to wait for miracles because you understand that you were designed to become one. In the end, choosing yourself is not selfish. It is sacred. It is how you honor the life entrusted to you. It is how you give back to existence by becoming everything you were meant to be. And when you finally stand firm in that truth, the world that once resisted your light begins to orbit around it, because nothing is more powerful, more unshakable, and more necessary than a soul that has chosen itself fully, fiercely, and forever.